The storm had quieted by morning, but the silence between us was louder than the thunder had been. I sat on the edge of the couch, her sweater draped over my shoulders, faintly carrying her scent, something warm and human, like rain and regret. She moved around the kitchen without looking at me, her movements slow, careful. The sound of the kettle was the only thing that filled the air. When she finally spoke, it wasn't what I expected. "So," she said softly, "do you regret it?" I turned toward her. "No." She froze, her back still to me. "You should," she whispered. "You really should." "I can't," I said. "Because for the first time, I don't feel like I imagined it. Like it actually happened." She sighed, that kind of sigh that carries both relief and exhaustion. Then she turned. The morning light caught her face, softer than the night before, her eyes still tired but open. "I've spent half my life being careful," she said. "And then you showed up, and I forgot how." I smiled a little. "Maybe careful isn't the point." She walked closer, hesitating at first, then sitting beside me. Our knees brushed. Neither of us moved away. She stared down at her hands, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup, before finally setting it aside. "When I was your age," she said, "I thought I knew what love was supposed to look like. Turns out, it doesn't follow any of the rules." I looked at her, and she met my gaze for the first time that morning. Her eyes held that same quiet storm I'd seen before, the one she always tried to hide under her calm voice and measured words. "I don't care what it looks like," I said. "I just want it to be real." She laughed softly. "You're going to ruin me." "Maybe," I said. "But you already ruined me first." Her breath caught, just slightly, before she leaned in, not to kiss me this time, but to rest her forehead against mine. The closeness felt heavier now, but peaceful too, like two people finally letting go of everything they were supposed to be. Outside, the light grew stronger. The storm had left the streets washed clean. She reached for my hand, fingers intertwining with mine, slow, certain. "This doesn't make sense," she murmured. "I know," I said. "But it doesn't have to." We stayed like that, hands held, silence unbroken, the world moving quietly outside. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple. But it was real. And for both of us, that was enough. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Don't promise me forever," she said. "Just stay until it stops feeling impossible." I nodded. "Then I guess I'm not going anywhere." She smiled, small, honest, a little sad, and rested her head on my shoulder. The kettle whistled again in the distance, but neither of us moved. The rain had stopped. The air was calm. And for the first time, it felt like we weren't running from anything anymore. She said, asterisk. "Don't ruin this." Asterisk, but the truth was, she already had. It started quietly. The kind of quiet that hums beneath everything you don't say out loud. I met her in a moment that didn't feel like one. Late afternoon, light spilling through half-closed blinds, the room smelling faintly of coffee and rain. She was leaning against the counter, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug, looking like someone who had already lived 1,000 little lives. She was 40, though the number didn't match her energy. There was something calm in the way she moved, measured, precise, but also something restless, like she'd forgotten what it was like to be seen. And maybe that's what drew me in. She spoke with pauses, like every word was being weighed before it was released. Her voice had that low, steady tone that made everything sound deliberate, even when it wasn't. I remember the first time she looked at me for longer than a second. That kind of look that feels like gravity. It wasn't flirtation. It was awareness. "Can you pass me that?" she asked, nodding toward the book near my hand. I did. My fingers brushed hers. Just a second. Enough for her to draw back a little too fast, as if the touch meant something it shouldn't. And maybe it did. She cleared her throat, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The movement was small, careful, like she didn't want to give herself away. I almost said something, anything, to ease the silence, but the air between us was heavy, fragile. So I said nothing. She smiled then, faintly, the kind of smile that looks borrowed from another life. "You think too much," she said. "You notice too much," I replied. That made her laugh, not loudly, but enough for the sound to stay with me long after. From that moment, it wasn't about what was said. It was the way she stood too close when she didn't need to. The way her sleeve brushed mine when she reached for something. The way she avoided looking at me for too long, but couldn't quite stop, either. She carried herself like she'd built walls high enough to keep the world out, but she forgot to close the door behind her. And I kept finding myself standing there, pretending I wasn't tempted to walk through it. Outside, the rain picked up, tapping softly against the glass. She glanced at the window, then at me. "I should go," she said, her tone unconvincing. "Do you want to?" I asked. Her lips parted like she was about to answer, then didn't. The seconds stretched, her silence saying more than anything she could have said out loud. She looked away first, the muscles in her jaw tightening just enough to betray her calm. "I don't know what you think this is," she said finally. "Neither do I." Her eyes met mine again. Softer now. Searching. The kind of look that holds 100 unspoken things: warning, regret, hope. Then she said it. "Don't ruin this." It wasn't a command. It was a plea. And yet, standing there, watching her try to convince herself she meant it, I already knew we were past the point of saving it. A sound broke the moment, a knock at the door. Sharp. Too real. Her expression shifted instantly. Whatever had been unraveling between us snapped tight again. She stepped back, arms crossed, face composed. But her eyes lingered 1 second too long. And in that second, before she turned away, I knew something had started that neither of us could stop. She didn't talk much after that day. Not in words, at least. But there was something about silence that made everything between us louder. A week later, she invited me over, said she needed help fixing something with her computer. I knew it wasn't really about that, but I didn't say anything. She didn't either. We both pretended it was nothing. That's how it started again. The house smelled faintly of vanilla and old books. Everything about her place felt like her, soft, deliberate, slightly out of reach. She stood by the window, light falling over her in broken lines. Her hair was tied up this time, though a few strands slipped loose, framing her face. "You're quiet today," I said, sitting down beside her. "I'm always quiet," she replied, smiling faintly. "You just talk more than you think you do." I didn't answer. I was too distracted by the way she leaned closer to look at the screen, the warmth of her shoulder brushing mine. It was such a small thing. But my body noticed before I did. I shifted slightly, trying to focus, trying not to let her see what her nearness did to me. She must have sensed it, because she leaned back, just a few inches, but enough to remind me how careful she was trying to be. She told me once, briefly, about her marriage. That it had ended quietly, no shouting, no drama. Just two people running out of reasons to try. She said it like it didn't matter, but her eyes gave her away. They always did. I think she'd been alone for a long time. Not lonely exactly, just untouched. Unnoticed. The kind of solitude that seeps into your bones until you forget what it feels like to be wanted. And me. I was young enough to notice everything she tried to hide. The hesitation when she laughed. The way her hands trembled slightly when she reached for her glass. The way she always looked away first. We worked in silence for a while. My fingers moved across the keyboard. Hers hovered nearby, close enough for me to feel the warmth of her skin. She leaned in again, this time closer, pointing something out on the screen. Her breath brushed against my neck. And I froze. She must have felt it too, because she stopped mid-sentence. Neither of us moved. The room went still, like the air itself was holding its breath. Then, slowly, she pulled away. "I shouldn't," she started, but her voice faltered. I turned to her, caught her looking at me in a way that wasn't supposed to happen. Like she was trying to memorize me before deciding to forget. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she whispered. Maybe it was never supposed to be easy. For a moment, she didn't look away. And for the first time, she didn't hide the way her eyes softened when they met mine. Her hand brushed my shoulder lightly as she stood, almost nothing. But it lingered just long enough to feel intentional. And in that touch, quiet and fleeting, something unspoken passed between us. Something neither of us were ready to name, but both of us already understood. She called again a few days later, said she found something on her hard drive she couldn't open. I knew what that meant. Still, I went. It was late afternoon this time. The light was softer, thinner, slipping through the curtains like it didn't want to intrude. She wore a loose white shirt, sleeves rolled up, her hair falling over her shoulders. I told myself I didn't notice, but I did. Every detail. She poured coffee for both of us. Hers went cold fast, she barely touched it. We sat side by side again, the air between us heavy with everything we weren't saying. I tried to keep it casual, eyes on the screen. But then her phone buzzed on the counter. A man's name flashed. She didn't move to answer. Just stared at it, still unreadable. I looked at her hand resting near the mouse. There was a ring mark around her finger, faint, like time had tried to erase it but hadn't quite succeeded. Friend? I asked before I could stop myself. She gave a quiet laugh. Something like that. Silence again. The kind that presses into your chest until you have to do something. I turned slightly, meaning to say something safe, maybe about the file, maybe about nothing at all, but she was already looking at me. Too close. There was this second, just one, where I forgot about the noise outside, about right or wrong, about what anyone would think. Her eyes dropped to my lips. And my heart just stopped. Then her phone buzzed again. Louder this time. She jumped. The sound broke whatever it was we almost became. She stood up fast, muttered something about needing to call back later. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. She rubbed her arm, like she was trying to erase the feeling of almost touching me. I don't know what this is, she said finally, not turning around. But it can happen. I wanted to say I agreed. I wanted to lie. Instead, I said nothing. When she finally turned back, there was this look, half apology, half invitation. Like she wanted me to prove her wrong, but couldn't ask me to. I reached out barely, my hand stopping inches from hers. She didn't move away. Didn't move closer either. We stood there like that, caught between restraint and surrender, between what we knew and what we wanted. Her breath trembled. So did mine. The distance between us was almost gone when a knock came at the door. We both froze. Her eyes darted to me, wide, panicked, then to the door. A voice from outside. Hey, you home? She whispered fast. Don't say anything. The air turned electric. My pulse was loud in my ears. She stepped closer, pressing a hand gently against my chest, not to pull me in, but to keep me still. The knock came again. And all I could think was how her touch burned through the thin layer of my shirt, and how impossible it was to breathe when she was this close. The days after that knock felt longer than they should have. She didn't answer my texts. Didn't open the door the one time I tried. And yet, that silence only pulled me closer. When she finally called, her voice was quiet, almost fragile. Come by. Please. I went, knowing I shouldn't. She was standing by the window when I walked in. Evening light washed over her, soft, amber, almost unreal. Her arms were crossed, but her shoulders trembled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. I thought we agreed to stop this, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. She turned, and her eyes caught mine, tired, searching, full of something that looked too much like surrender. I tried, she whispered. But you keep showing up in my head. Even when I don't want you there. That broke whatever distance I had been trying to hold. I took a step closer. She didn't move. Another step. Now I could see the faint freckles near her collarbone, the pulse just below her throat. This is wrong, she said. You know that, right? Then tell me to leave. She didn't. The room was too still. The hum of the city outside sounded distant, unreal. Her breath trembled as I reached up, fingers brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat too long. You shouldn't look at me like that, she murmured. Then stop standing this close. That made her laugh, soft, broken, the kind that hurts to hear. I'm older, she said, voice low. I should know better. Maybe I don't want better. Something in her snapped then. Maybe it was fear, maybe something she'd been holding for too long. She stepped forward fast, until I could feel the heat of her body, the soft press of her breath against my neck. Don't ruin this, she said, barely audible. I think you already did, I whispered back. She looked up, eyes glinting with a mix of anger and want. Her hand lifted like she wanted to push me away, but instead, her fingers found the edge of my jaw. Her touch was hesitant at first, then sure. I can't want this, she said again, but the words cracked halfway through. Then don't say it, I breathed. The air between us turned heavier, like something alive charged. Her thumb traced the corner of my mouth. My heart was a drum against my ribs. We were so close I could count her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Every one felt like a choice. Tell me to stop, I said. She didn't. Her lips parted, a single tremor running through her. Then, the sound of her phone vibrating on the table broke the moment. We both flinched. She glanced at the screen. Her expression changed, a shadow crossing her face. I caught the reflection of a man's name glowing in the glass. And just like that, everything tilted. She looked back at me, whispering, You shouldn't be here. But her hand was still on my jaw. The silence after her phone stopped buzzing felt louder than anything. She didn't answer it. Just let it ring out. Then she turned the screen face down, slowly, like she couldn't bear to look at it. Who was that? I asked. The question slipped out too sharp, too fast. Her eyes flicked toward me, not angry, just cornered. You shouldn't ask questions you don't want the answers to. That stung, but I didn't back off. Then maybe tell me anyway. She exhaled, a tremor catching in her throat. He's my ex-husband. Her voice barely held. He wants to talk again. Says he's changed. I froze. Not because of who he was, but because of what it meant. Everything between us suddenly felt smaller, more dangerous. You didn't tell me you still talked, I said. I don't, she whispered. I didn't. Until now. Her arms crossed, defensive, almost shivering even though the room wasn't cold. It wasn't just jealousy burning under my ribs. It was fear, the kind that comes when you realize you're in deeper than you should be. Still, I took a step forward. I'm not him, I said quietly. I don't want to be him. She looked up then, eyes glossy in the dim light. That's exactly the problem. Her words landed somewhere deep, a quiet confession hiding inside the hurt. I reached for her hand, but she stepped back, brushing past me so close that her shoulder grazed my chest. The contact was accidental, but it lingered, a ghost of warmth that neither of us wanted to acknowledge. You think this is simple? She said, facing away now. It's not. You're young. You don't know what happens when you start needing someone you shouldn't. I know what happens when you don't, I said. She turned at that, quick, sharp, eyes meeting mine with something between anger and longing. You don't understand, she whispered. He broke me once. And somehow, you're making me remember what it felt like before that. The words hit harder than any confession could. It wasn't love she feared. It was hope. I stepped closer again, slow this time. I don't care what it looks like, I said. I just don't want to be the thing you regret. Her hand twitched at her side, a flicker of hesitation, then a tremble. You already are, she said softly. I didn't move. Neither did she. The space between us pulsed with something heavy, unspoken, attraction wrapped in guilt. Then ruin it, I said. If it's going to break anyway, At least let it mean something. For a heartbeat, her face softened, torn between running and staying. Her fingers brushed mine, brief, deliberate, and her breath hitched as if the smallest touch carried too much weight. Don't, she whispered again. Not tonight. Her voice shook this time. And before I could say anything else, she turned and walked toward the door, but stopped just short of it. Without looking back, she said, "If you're still here when I turn around, everything changes." I didn't move. Not an inch. And she started to turn. She turned. And the moment she did, the air in the room changed, like something invisible gave way. Her eyes found me, steady this time, and I swear the space between us vanished before either of us moved. Either of us spoke. We didn't need to. Her hand was still on the doorknob. Mine hung useless at my side, fingers twitching with restraint I didn't really have. The rain outside tapped against the window, soft, slow, as if counting down something inevitable. "You stayed," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was almost resigned. "I didn't know how to leave," I answered. A half-smile ghosted across her face, something sad stitched into the corners. "You should've." "I know." She let go of the handle, and when she turned fully toward me, her hair brushed her shoulder, that simple, familiar motion making my chest tighten. Every step she took toward me felt deliberate. Her bare feet on the wooden floor, her breath steady but uneven at the same time. I could feel it, the distance shrinking until it wasn't a distance at all. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" she whispered. "No," I said. "Do you?" She shook her head, just once. Then she reached up, not to touch me, but to stop herself, her hand hovering midair before falling again. I couldn't help it. I took her hand. Slowly. Her fingers were cold at first, then warm as she let them stay in mine. "This isn't right," she murmured. "Then why does it feel like it is?" Her laugh was quiet, almost a breath. "Because you're young. Because I'm stupid." I stepped closer. Close enough to feel her breath against my neck. "That's not it." Her eyes lifted to mine, and whatever she was holding back flickered, faltered, and then fell apart entirely. Her other hand came up, tentative, brushing my face, tracing along the edge of my jaw. Her thumb paused at my mouth, trembling slightly before she pulled it away. This will ruin everything," she whispered. "It already has." Silence stretched. Only the rain dared to move. Her eyes flicked from my lips to my eyes and back again. "Say something," I said. She swallowed hard. "If I do, I won't be able to stop." "Then don't." And that was it, the breaking point. She didn't step forward. I didn't pull her in. We just let it happen. The closeness, the weight, the inevitability of two people who'd run out of reasons not to. But right before our lips met, right at the edge of everything, she whispered, "Promise me something." "What?" "Don't make me regret this." The sound of thunder rolled in the distance, shaking the window glass. Her eyes didn't move from mine. "I won't," I said. "Not if you don't." For a second, she believed me. I saw it, in the way her shoulders eased, the way her breath hitched, the way her guard finally fell. And then she kissed me. Not desperate. Not soft. Just real. When we finally broke apart, she didn't speak. She only pressed her forehead to mine, eyes closed, whispering something I almost didn't hear. "Now it's too late to turn back."